Different Drummer was also inspired by things that I lived and saw for many, many years.
Do you also write nonfiction?
Yes. To make a living, I
do make a living
I
on that?
do a very meager living, but I do. I write nonfiction. I do articles for a magazine called Industry Magazine, so I interview musicians and artists and people all over the place. I also write for a site called Ravishly and The Establishment, and I do a lot of essays for them.
Mm-hmm. You do no poetry yet?
I do poetry as well, but poetry makes even less money than novels do.
Oh, of course, of course. Well, anyway, now you wrote this second novel.
Yes.
And which is called Different Drummer.
Yes.
Maybe we'll show it to... and now this is your second. How long did it take for you to finish this work? Because you told me it was already in the works.
Yes, I technically began Different Drummer when I was in college. It started as a short story, and then it started as a final project.
You started in college?
In college, but then I left it for many, many years. And then the character changed. It changed from a male drummer to a female drummer. So I've been working on it on and off for probably about 30 years.
Okay. So you're writing, and how do you write? Do you write regularly in the night and the day? I imagine if you do work to make money with it, you write every day.
I try. I mean, when I'm working on a novel, it's very difficult because I might have other deadlines that take precedence. But it's like I steal away moments. I almost feel like I'm cheating on my other career, and just taking the time to write in a novel that I'm working on just feels like it's just a treasure. And I write mostly in the mornings. Mm-hmm. You know, when my husband and son are asleep, when it's quiet.
I see. Oh, your son and your husband are asleep in the morning. Oh, early in the morning.
Early in the morning, generally.
5 o'clock, 4 o'clock.
Sometimes, yeah.
Tell me, I see the picture of the front page has a picture of somebody who is writing.
Yes.
And probably is writing a diary. And at the same time, it has drumsticks.
Yes.
Drumsticks. So I imagine that is a picture which is, it wants to indicate that what the subject is about, right?
Exactly. Different Drummer is part journal written. It's partly Kara, the main character, the drummer, is her journal, and then people commenting, about a dozen different people in her life commenting about her. So the cover is actually inspired by the Elvis Presley cover. He did an album called Elvis Presley. It's like a black and white photograph with pink and green writing, and then later The Clash, their London Calling, had that. And if you look really closely, the journal entry on the front cover is actually Kara's first journal entry in the book. I had this idea, that's what I wanted the cover to be, and my publisher, Vinnie Corbo of Veloso Publishing, actually recreated this.
Yeah, I noticed your publisher is the same as
Yes.
the first one. And you seem to be liking, they do a great job.
He's great, thank you. Vinnie is very hands-on. He gives the writer a lot of say. I also went to California. I went to Los Angeles to do a reading for the L last summer at Book Soup, which is a pretty big bookstore in Hollywood, and I hope to do more of that.
Well, you talked about the journal the first day. In fact, it is a new format that you used before. The first novel, it was a regular
yes, it was
novel,
narrative.
narrative. Now you have a journal or a diary of a girl. Mm-hmm. And it's amazing because through the diary, eventually you start seeing the whole world around her, you know,
right.
The boyfriend, the mother, the family. Basically, you also describe families. The first time you talked about a family which was a dysfunctional family.
Right.
This time it's also a dysfunctional family.
As most families are, I think.
Most families are. In fact, the more dysfunctional they are, the more creative they may become, apparently.
I think so. Yes.
So it is it is autobiographical and it is a diary. But it is not simply a diary of one person. Mm-hmm. You have several people in a diary format.
Right.
How did you arrive to that? That was going to be the technique in which you could represent the world that you wanted to create?
Well, I definitely wanted Kara's diary entries, and they are all dated, and it takes place over a 9-month period, just about. And one of my friends said it was like a birth almost. But then I felt that I couldn't just have her commenting about herself. I felt that we needed other people to comment about her.
As a confirmation of what she was saying.
Right, so that you knew that she really was a brilliant drummer.
The technique is working very well, because you see another point of view, not just what she says, but also another point. So I think it's very efficacious, or very very good. I felt that you could see the world from a different perspectives, and therefore a great result.
But it was also very difficult because I felt almost like I was writing myself into a corner sometimes. I always had to move the story forward. I couldn't just, have somebody commenting about Kara. It had to just move the story ahead.
And now you said it took almost 9 months, but it was a specific year. Any reason why? 1979?
1979, I think it was a really interesting year for music. I think there was some really bad and really good music, and I reference a lot of music Kara does in the book, because in addition to trying to make it as a rock musician, she also plays weddings and bar mitzvahs and things like that. So she does covers, and she does the Bee Gees and things like that. So I thought it was just a really rich musical era. And also, I was exposed to the industry during that time. I was.
Let's go one thing at a time. Now, you spoke several times about Kara. Who is Kara?
She is a character that I totally made up, but she was inspired by someone I knew, a singing drummer who I knew many years ago, who was just hell-bent on making it and would just sacrifice anything in his life. And I changed it to a woman.
Now, this is a Jewish girl.
Yes.
Who comes from a family that is broken up, or
yes, a child of divorce, grew up in Levittown in the beginning, and there's a lot of Long Island locations in this book.
Yeah, well, the locations are very also real. I mean, Brooklyn, Manhattan. What does she do in addition to? Well, we already know. You told her that she's a drummer.
Right.
But she does other things.
She does temp work in addition to doing, on weekends, doing weddings and bar mitzvahs. She does temp work in an office, which she finds it's terrible, it's boring, but it's steady.
It's steady. Well, in addition, it comes up from her diary that it's very psychological. You can see the way she thinks and she aspires to do. But there is also, what I believe, very interesting, the social aspect of it. The employer, who is the Post, the New York Post, how they try to hide and not hire permanent people, but have temps so that they could save on
health insurance,
and also pay less. And when you don't work, they don't pay you.
Right. So
I think this is a very realistic approach to what the real world is.
Thank you.
And also, even the person who was the leader, the band leader, he tries not to pay, or pay as little as possible. So I think this is even today's world, you can associate it with,
Right, I've seen that happen. I mean, he's getting 2 for 1 with Kara. He's getting a singing musician, and he didn't pay her double. He tried to short her a lot, and he was based on somebody that I knew in the industry, who is still in the club date industry, and I won't name his name, but he's out in this area in Long Island.
Okay, you never introduced the subject, so I think I may ask questions.
You can.
Your language here is very rich in musical, not only that, but the world that we see. It's a music business industry in New York City, which before you referred to was a very interesting year for the music industry. But what is your direct experience? Do you have any direct experience with music? Because in the book, from the very beginning to the end, you talk about a world, frankly, I was not familiar with. I know bands and things like that, but I was not immersed into the real world of how they suffer and die, they struggle in order to make it.
Right. I was very close to the industry. I was immersed in the industry on the periphery. I was married to a drummer for many years, for almost 10 years. So these are things that I saw. These are, you try so hard, you get a demo out there, you get a record out there, and people say, oh, it's really good, but the mix isn't great, and I could remix it for you. And the lies that you hear, the crooked band leaders, all of that, CBGBs. I was in CBGBs in that time frame, and it was just a disgusting, smelly place, just as I describe it. All those other clubs like the Peppermint Lounge and things like that are no more, and they're very, very posh.
But you also talk about the studios in which they record these music. The Larva, I was not familiar. I don't know if they really exist with those
I
things.
changed the name. It was based on another music company.
I see. But these are studios that exist in New York City.
Yes, some of the studio names were Electric Ladyland.
It does exist.
Yes, that does exist. That's still there. And I would be, when they were doing recordings, which is so boring. It's like watching paint dry. If you're not there creating the music, it is just so painstaking and repetitive. It's like watching somebody write.
And Cara, what is Cara's main object in life? Because she's very intense in her feelings and music especially. She lives for music. What's her aim? Why? What happened? Her life is trying to make it by a specific year, a specific date.
She puts a deadline on herself by the time she's 30, which is the end of this year. If she doesn't make it, if she doesn't have a record of 1979, yes. And if she doesn't make it, that's it. She doesn't say exactly what she's going to do, but she keeps saying it's over. Whether it's suicide, whether she's leaving, you don't quite know. And she is just hell-bent on making it. And you see that she's very insecure, and this is how she defines herself, by her music, by other people's approval or disapproval.
Of course, talking about the suicide, there was one of her... Don't
give it away, but there was a suicide in the book.
No, I'm not giving it away. Okay. It's just that it does happen that suicide is in the cards, but we don't know. By the way, this novel, if we can call it a novel, obviously it's a diary. It's an open-ended diary, right?
Yes.
Do you consider that as an open-ended? In other words, we don't know the results. Is that?
It's, I would say, inconclusive at the ending. You have to. It's left up to how you interpret it.
The reader.
Yes.
Okay, so she's insecure, and obviously she's a full person. She uses vulgar language sometimes, and there are sexual scenes and all that. But she is aiming at finishing this 30-year or nothing, or whatever. And the world is either collapsing or not working towards her. So I know I don't want to go to the ending, but the ending is that it will be. But her character herself. Talk to me a little about her mother. She is a mother that obviously divorced, and she has her own problems.
Very bitter. A lot of people tell me, a lot of people tell me that they could relate to her. I was afraid. She's a typical Jewish mother. I think many of my friends, she was based on one of my friends' mothers. And she's just doesn't give Cara credit for anything. She's very critical. She's not loving. She's very bitter about life. And it's almost like some of that bitterness has sifted into Cara.
Mhm. And she doesn't want to get married because of the
Right.
music. She's so
Right. Kara wants to have a career, and she tries to get her mother's love and approval. The L had a lot of food in it, where a different drummer does have a lot of food, but it's mostly takeout because they're not from the cookers. So, you know, there's all these Brooklyn, you know, Nathans and Brennan and Carr and things like that. So, yeah, they're completely different people. They're not.
Of course, they are different people. And the bands that she plays in, you know, you just said before bar mitzvahs and weddings. She hops around with all these bands, right? But she knows at the end she has to make it, otherwise there's going to be a disaster somehow.
And there's one band, Aircraft, who she finds from a Village Voice ad, and she thinks
of course,
that is her
according
chance.
to her in the diary, she has met many of all the bands or wanting to be band leaders and etc. and never turn out to be
Nothing ever happens.
Right. So she meets the group.
Yes.
The Aircraft.
Yes.
And what happened there?
And they have a chance. They do a showcase at CBGB's, and they meet a record executive who Bruce, who is a slimy individual, as many people in that industry are. A&R men, you know, they say they call it find and sign. It's supposedly they really do that to push themselves ahead. You know, if they
this specific Bruce seems to know what is good for Kara.
He does.
Seems to know where to go and how to get there.
Right. He's more interested in her than in the band. And he's very slimy with the way he goes about.
He's interested in her because she sees the talent.
Right.
The others, he doesn't care. I mean, he's a person who uses people because that's his profession, but at the same time he's talented. He knows that this girl has the talent, and therefore he wants her to become an artist and not the others. So as a compromise, he accepts one or two of the other people.
But then she also, you see things happening, he's interested in her sexually as well, and you see things like that happening in the record industry today with that whole thing with Kesha saying that her producer made advances to her, and things like that still happen.
In fact, she has a dilemma. Do I have to give in or do I have to stand?
Do other people do this? Does he do this with men? You know, it's really very difficult because this is what she wants. And will she do it by any means necessary, or will she have morals?
Well, she says that.
Right, she does.
She says that. But eventually, I don't know if we can say, sometimes she gives in, sometimes she doesn't. Right. She feels guilty. Guilt is another part of her cultural background.
Guilt is a Jewish art, they say. Yes.
Yeah. Well, Catholics are also ridden with it.
But Jewish guilt is different.
Yeah. Okay, talking about Jewish guilt. In the book, you have many expressions or words, Yiddish words. Now, I know you're an Italian American. Maybe we could talk about a little that, because it is rich with, obviously, you are impersonating or you're creating a character which is Jewish, so it's natural that some of these words and expressions do come out.
Right.
But how did you acquire all this? Just because you were born in Brooklyn?
I think growing up in Brooklyn, you're immersed in that. You hear Yiddish all the time, and it's almost like part of the lingo. You don't even think of it as being Yiddish. And also being married to a Jewish man for many years, I heard it in his family. And being the goy in the family, like Michael, who is Kara's long-suffering on-again, off-again boyfriend. It was kind of based on me, I think. A lot of it, him is based on me.
Oh, Michael is
yes.
Oh, you were the cool one. You just accepted things as they came. Oh, I did not think of that you would be that person.
That was me, the only Italian in the book, but that was the Italian American.
Well, some of the people claim to be Italian American also. So, what it would be if we were to compare the mother and the daughter, of course, you did try to have established some differences, but there are many similarities to the mother. The daughter is becoming
Right.
like her mother in a sense.
They're both very bitter, but I think Kara still has hope, and I think her mother Edie has just given up hope, and she just doesn't. You know, she feels like she's physically impaired. She has a bad leg. She walks with a walker, and she has very little joy in her life. And Kara tries to bring her joy. She tries to through food, through her company, and nothing is ever good enough.
Well, apparently, the way Kara describes it, the mother does not appreciate what she does and all that is related to Kara, but in reality, it's not true.
No, I think the mother does deep down, but the mother feels that she has to make her tough. You know, the world is a hard place, and she can't show her. You know, she came from an age where people didn't really show their love. Even for their children, they hid it. And Kara's mother is very much like that.
But Kara's mother, Eddie, cares much about her. In fact, when she was thought she was having a heart attack or was in the hospital, she wanted to talk to Kara and give some instructions. I think that was funny.
Right.
What happened there with the box?
A Tom McCann box. Actually, I knew a person who had, like, all of their life was basically their mom kept everything in a shoebox. And actually, when my mother passed away, when I was going through her things, I saw she kept every piece of writing that I ever wrote, that I ever sent her, that I ever had published was in a manila envelope.
Oh, so there was a kind of relation between you and her at that point. Okay. Right, so we spoke about the various jobs that she had, but the musical industry is what she was worried about, right? And then Bruce, in a sense, put her on the good road, didn't he? Aside from the fact that it was lazy and all that, it was almost. Did it happen, or was it most happening that she was going to be a star after all? You know,
he did put her on a good road. I think because he saw he could make money from her, and he was somebody who was kind of shamed.
But that's part of the job, isn't it?
Right. But he was shamed in the industry. He had a few duds, and this was his last chance to get back and to prove himself.
Both desperate people.
Right. They were both desperate.
Drugs was another issue aspect of your play there. I imagine it's because in the music industry, we all know generally that they use drugs.
Right. In the
but
70s
here we
and
go
80s,
into the specifics of the using. And did Kara use drugs?
She did occasionally. There was a lot of cocaine use in the 70s and 80s.
So you're representing the time.
Yes. So she did use. And it was interesting because I wrote a lot of the scenes where Kara is strung out and high on coke, and her mind is zipping all over the place when I was on chemo drugs and steroids. So part of me said, I can't write. I have cancer. I can't write. But it really helped because I was out of my head on the drugs sometimes.
Oh, you did.
So it helped because it was a lot like cocaine. I understood. It was like,
and now it's okay.
Yes, now I'm fine. 3 years.
You know, there's one character which I thought it would be, or it could be developed a lot. Bruce's secretary. I thought she was funny and she had her own personality. I don't remember the name, but
Trini. She was a scrappy Latina from the Bronx, and she was one of the few people who could keep Bruce in check. I mean, Bruce was a man of excesses, from sexual to drugs to drinking, and she kind of tried to keep him on the straight and narrow as much as she could.
But her logic was funny, the way she says, you know, I cannot help these people, but I thought it's a character that probably could be developed. I believe she stands up on her own.
Well, thank you. I liked her a lot. She was a fun character, and she came in toward the end and commented on Kara as well.
Now you see Kara from different point of views, and the very beginning of the book, there is a lady who was a cook.
Yes, actually, it was a man, Garland, and that was the name
I
of
thought
an
it was Judy Garland.
No, it was actually Garland was the name of an acupuncturist, a Chinese acupuncturist that I had. So I borrowed his name, and he comments on her.
Yeah, this introductory chapter or diary in intake describes probably, no, not the only time, but one of the first time we get an impression of who Kara is, and she actually plays. Would you like to read maybe a couple of sentences?
Sure. That actually opens the book. Before you hear from Kara, you hear from Garland. And I found something interesting in a lot of temples. The cooks were either African American or Chinese, making Jewish soul food. So this is from Garland, who is the sous chef at the Temple Lev Simcha.
Of course, now this comes in from nowhere. The moment we open the book, it comes in.
This is how we start.
And that's a cook describing Kara's.
Exactly. She was like a fire. I stood at the kitchen door, watching. Even above the clatter and chatter of the kitchen, I heard her. The drumming, like the constant knocking on a door that refused to open, like the beating of an angry heart that was about to explode, only different, persistent, yet in perfect rhythm, rising and falling like anxious breath, swelling, then subsiding like the ocean. I was drawn to the doorway, held fast there. Her movements were so rapid that her hands were little more than a blur, moving from drum to cymbal, back to drum again in a flash, as thoughtlessly as other people breathe, as swiftly as a flame engulfs a house or a tree. That's the way she moved, as though it were natural, organic, as easy and effortless as walking, because for her, it was. So this, I wanted to give an impression of Kara from the get-go, from somebody else, not from her saying, oh, I'm the world's greatest drummer, but from somebody watching her, being drawn to her.
Mm-hmm.